Hi guys. Quick note before we start the episode. Sorry for the late posting. Chukwu and I have had not a really good run of it the past couple weeks because we lost the audio for a recording, and my internet was out for over a week, and so I couldn't upload anything on my end. So it's just been kind of a mess. So we appreciate your understanding, and we hope you enjoy this episode of the Runaway Brides Podcast. Thank you.
Welcome to the Runaway Brides Podcast, where we de-imperialize, de-colonize, culturally analyze, and leave evangelical cultism at the altar. My name is Chukwu.
My name's Becca.
And today's episode is entitled The Imperial Colonization of American Education. So, we're going to be discussing how the United States is on a mission to protect the ruling class and its system of capitalism from the working class. And in order to mask this exploitation of capitalism, and by default, the exploitation and imperialism of the oppressed peoples and workers of the world, it is essential that the U.S. indoctrinate its population and give them a multiple personality disorder in the process. Essentially just trying to show how the education system is really designed to make you educated just enough to be a good little worker, but not necessarily educated enough. Like, they just want you educated enough to be able to work a crane. They don't necessarily need you educated enough to question why you're working the crane at all. Just work the crane. Yeah. I will just hop right into it. So, one of our first points we got in here is that American education has its origins in Christian control stemming from the Puritans. So, again, it's important to keep in mind that whenever the United States, or the precursor to the United States, of the colonies, were first founded, essentially, the it's always important. I like to tell my students when I teach that every government, technically speaking, is a dictatorship. It's just a dictatorship of who. Mm-hmm. So, and also, some people can want specific dictatorships too. That's not uncommon, clearly. So, the Puritans, when they came over from England, they say in a lot of history books, right, that they're fleeing religious oppression and whatever. And me formerly being Anglican, I can tell you right now that the Puritans were a hot mess in England, especially since they had control of the government. They literally executed the king. Again, and I'm not a Christian, so it doesn't necessarily matter to me, but it's still wild. They killed the king, took over the government, set up a new government. I mean, they had full control of the country and the religious practices of everybody there. And then, once the government flipped back, they complained. So, they complained before. And obviously the English church. I'm not getting into that. I'm going off on a tangent. Both were pressing each other. Whatever. Mm-hmm. So the Puritans left, went to the Americas, and they basically established a dictatorship of their own religious preference. The Massachusetts Bay Colony, they would not allow any kind of religious dissent within their own ranks. And this is very clear throughout, various laws. There's very, very strict Old Testament-esque laws that the Puritans are very famous for. If you ever read a book like The Scarlet Letter, It's very evident in classics like that. Salem witch trials, as well. Also, Quakers. Quakers were again obviously of a different faith practice of sorts. They were hung. Um, by the Massachusetts Bay Colony. So, the origin. So it's funny whenever people will talk about how this country was like founded on like Christian principles. Um, and I say yes and no. Like if you really want to go back to like when the people actually got here, yeah, I mean the Christian principles of showing up and eradicating all other kinds of belief systems that are different from your own, and then killing all the dissenters. Like yes, in that
Yeah.
case, you're absolutely right. um, you had a lot of like conformity to their interpretation of the Bible is what was really necessary. And this is important again because I know the title is like Imperial Colonization of American Education, but I know that's probably like why are we talking about Christianity in the schools? Is and I'll digress briefly to just explain that the reason why is because Christianity has been used, or is kind of like the chosen system of philosophy, because every like society has a philosophy that defends it. Like feudal society, for instance, feudal society did also relied on a lot of Christian, or at least I guess I'll be more specific, like the after Roman, um, feudal, well, yeah, after Roman, like feudal society in Europe really relied on the like Christian divine rights ruling, interpretations of scripture, that Thomas Aquinas really, really developed as well. And that like Queen Victoria also like kind of took and accepted, along with others. And so it's been kind of like the philosophers and theologians who have been influenced by like Christianity. They have used it as a philosophical like foundation for a lot of the things that they do. Um, and that bleeds into capitalism because when capitalism was established, you had the colonialism of all these different global South countries, and also the natives living over in the Americas. And so in order to justify doing that, they needed a philosophical foundation for doing so. They had basically a philosophical foundation for the white supremacy that they enacted, and so a lot of it was divine right, and it was all rooted in Christian ideology. So that hasn't changed today. Like anyone looking at the country and seeing the whole like Christian nationalism wave, like
Ridiculous.
duh. I mean, the reason why they're doing that is not new. Like it's like their fallback. Like they used it during the civil rights movement. They used it during slavery. They used it like literally anytime they have done any kind of oppression, invading Mexico, all these different places. Like Christianity's like they're kind of like their fallback philosophical grounding that they like root themselves in. So you gotta get that in order to see like how it's been used. Um, so like I was saying, like facts weren't really like essential necessarily when it comes to like Christian, when it comes to like a Christian like rule or way of life. When it comes to like as like because like I'm a materialist, and I use like dialectical materialism in my like study history and stuff. But like as a materialist, right? There's not really there's a lot of things that I encounter in real life that contradicts or will like prove something of scripture wrong. And the problem is that Christians don't approach life, or their belief system doesn't really allow them to approach life in this way because it will destroy the faith, the faith itself, which is odd too because you would think if Christianity itself was this like undisputed truth, like literally nothing whatsoever could like ever disprove it. So there shouldn't necessarily be a problem um, with differences of opinions, but that's not been the case. Constantly used to like back in the day, any kind of opposing religious interpretations from even the controlling denomination is not wasn't allowed. In a lot of state constitutions, like atheists were not allowed to hold office. They weren't allowed to run for public office at all. Blasphemy is obviously punishable by, imprisonment. Obviously, sodomy laws literally were in place up until recent times. So I mean, yeah, it's insane. So this is still the purpose. Uh, Again, this is important because if facts aren't really like necessary in a Christian hegemonic educational system, or if Christians are willing to have their education like shifted in order to accommodate their beliefs, or reality shifted to accommodate their beliefs, then this works really well when it comes to, political manipulations and just like population control, because you can say that, black people are destined to be slaves for eternity, and the Bible says it's okay, and no one's really gonna bat an eye. You can just I think we mentioned like one of our earlier episodes, like the Bible kind of just is like fluid, like it just kind of changes with society's needs, and then depending on what society wants to do at that point, is the Bible will support it essentially. Um, so this is generally still the purpose of education. And according to Christians, since their opposition to any kind of, like I mentioned, any type of like factual, um, any kind of like factual debate, they would. So because Christians are like generally opposed to any kind of factual debate that is not being argued with the presupposition that the Bible itself is true, there's really nothing you can essentially do, especially whenever something like Christian nationalism starts to take over, or even like, during like the civil rights movement, when they would use Christianity as an excuse to have like segregation and all this stuff, because you're arguing with people who are not using any factual information. You're arguing with people who are like already believe the thing they're talking about, and the problem is they think you need to believe it first before they can even have a conversation with you. So they don't really even bother having a conversation with you, really. That's why a lot of these people get violent, because in their mind, like if they can't change your mind to get you to believe them, they're not going to try to convince you because they don't think you can be convinced. They think you're lost. So what do you do with a person who just won't get convinced? You got to eliminate them. You either convince them or you just force them down, and then you kind of are like, well, they'll join the program in time. Um, there was actually a quote I wanted to mention. I've going through Darwin's Origin of Species for the first time, which is an excellent book. Like an example of this, there's a quote that the wife of Bishop Worcester said after the book was published, and this was in England, I believe. Yeah, I believe it was in England. So they heard. So the brief context is that the people heard that Darwin had. Now Darwin, a lot of people don't believe this, but Darwin was actually a Christian before before he actually did his investigations. And actually he was, I might be butchering it, but I believe I'm accurate. I believe he went on his trip originally to actually shore up the defense of a lot of like the Christian interpretation of like sciences and biology. So he went on this trip, and he went on the trip and was like, "Oh, this doesn't check out at all," and came back with all of his data, and then wrote it down, and then presented it, and the whole Sasser was shocked. So the wife made a comment. She got the copy, and she has a statement where she says, quote, "Descended from the apes. My dear, let us hope that it is not true. But if it is, let us pray that it will not become generally known." So what you see in this quote, right, is there is an acknowledgement from the wife that it could be true, which means that their faith might be shot. But instead of going, if it's true, let's, see what this is all about, she instead is like, let's just hope it just gets suppressed and it's just not like she said, it doesn't just become generally known. So again, the facts don't matter. It's not that she's not over here wondering like, oh, what's going on, let's learn about, what we might think about the world might not be true. Oh no, absolutely not. That's antithetical to what they can do, because their whole worldview, power, faith, position, lifestyle, all that depends on this entire house of cards, essentially. And so this is still, like I said, the general purpose of education. Christians, they have opposition to any kind of evolution in schools, even if it's true or not. So again, basic scientific fact is being, prevented from talked about, like at the school I teach at. Like I can bring it up. I can only bring it up as like I have to be like super judicious. Like I have to bring it up and present like both arguments as if the creationist argument is valid at all. I have to like bring it up and be like, so this is what the evolutionists say, and this is what the creationists say, and I always just say, I'm like, go do your own research and see what you think. In order to even present the other argument, because if I go by the book, they are like misrepresenting, like, they said like the only reason why Uranus is on its side is because like God made it that way, and like the evolutionists require that all planets have to orbit in the same way. And I went and looked that up, and that's not true. They don't say they have to orbit in the same way. But it was like an old debunked argument, but they're still putting this in these books. So then Christians grow up and they go, so, oh yeah, well, I mean, Uranus is easily a disproving thing because, all orbits in the same way and da da da. And then someone else who's like semi-educated is going to look and be like, what are you talking about? And the Christians will sit there and just get uncomfortable because they don't know how to answer. They're like, well, they're just, they've been, indoctrinated. So, yeah, so Christianity is generally now, after like the 60s and those rulings that took place, Christianity isn't like super forced in the schools. Obviously, again, there's exceptions. You have Texas, Alabama, a lot of those southern countries, especially now, are trying to push it more, mainly because they're trying to reel in control. And which again, you can see this too, right? The schools is where they like wrest control of the mind, right? So a lot of them, they started to slip, and they started to allow like Christianity to kind of not be as forced, because there were some good, decent judges who ruled you can't force this madness on people. And what it was doing was producing people who started to question stuff. And then that's how you started to get, the, abortion arguments, and you started to get the acceptance of like, LGBTQ, and then you have like black liberation, and all these dangerous things start showing up out of the blue. And so it's kind of like we got to get back in those schools and like really reassert that white supremacy through Christianity, and to try to make it seem as if it's like this super moral thing, because if we don't, we're gonna lose the power we've developed and curated for so many years. So that was why a lot of education is very Eurocentric and imperial. So you don't really learn anything about other countries, and if you do, you always learn about them through the lens of Europe. So like when Europe showed up at these quote unquote underdeveloped nations, these underdeveloped nations that made things that we still don't know how they did it, how they did, but whatever. We learn about how they contributed to the well-being, economy, and success of Europe. You don't ever really hear what Europe does wrong. You don't ever hear about, what the colonized people's opinions were. You don't ever learn about France Fanon. You don't ever learn about anybody who opposed them. You're just learning about this glorious age of, almost as if Europe and Greece was like the start of everything. They like really, especially in American education, they like start at Greece, if anywhere at all. It's like
Yeah.
Greece is the origin of everything good, wisdom,
Maybe
knowledge.
Egypt if we're feeling spicy.
Maybe even then they say it was the Arabs. There's not a like when the Arabs had gone and like taken over Egypt. That's the period they talk about. Like
Right.
they don't talk about how anyone else did anything. The idea is almost kind of like they almost view it like they teach it like Europe was like a Minecraft player in a Minecraft sandbox server, and they just traveled everywhere and just discovered stuff. And it was like, oh my gosh, there's a mine of this here. Let me get that. Oh wow, there's these little sheep that just kind of don't know what to do. Let me put them in a pen and give them a purpose. And like let me just build this great thing. Like it's literally just like a sandbox. Like we're all just like NPCs, just like just walking around, and they're just like, oh look, a savage who doesn't know how to think for themselves. Hello, the two-spirited creature over there that you respect so highly. Actually, they need to be executed because and we'll bring in our nuclear Christian family, and we'll eliminate all your history.
Who all are blonde haired and blue eyed because that's the optimal way to look.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
We were just talking
So,
about that in one of my classes the other day. Like how Eurocentric, and then even then, like one of my classmates was saying that she didn't even learn about a lot of European stuff until she took like a European history class. Like most of the history you get is just like US history. And then like even then it's like, yeah, it's all very, and like slavery is only talked about in the confines or in the context of the Civil War. You don't learn about how it started, how Europe came into everything. Like a lot of stuff is like, it's very Eurocentric, and then even Eurocentric, it's like is very almost stretching it because it's just U.S. centric. You learn about just the U.S., like just what what the history of the United States as a country is. That's super emphasized, and then you learn very little about like world history or European history or anything like that until like even like high school, it seems like. So yeah, it's so frustrating. It's like they try to claim that we're one of the most educated countries in the world, and it's like, but are we? Like, you know, are we?
yeah. No, I completely agree. That's and the point too is they have to prepare like students, whether the curriculum is Christian or not. You have to understand that it doesn't have to be Christian, right? Because the white supremacy is based on Christian ideology. So you have to understand, even if you don't have the Christian in the textbook, right? The ideology of white supremacy, which is what this entire system was founded on, is completely reliant upon the Christian foundation. Because again, you get this divine narrative. Even in like secular books, there's still like this subconscious divine narrative. Like the United States and Europe are just these weird alien gifts to mankind that kind of just brought life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Like I had a conversation with a friend who had the audacity to tell me that the right to bear arms was an American concept, or it was like Oh no, he said it was a Western concept. I'm like, you have got to be out of your fucking mind to sit here and really tell me that the idea of the right of people to own weapons and defend themselves is a uniquely Western idea. Have you looked like that? But that right there is the indoctrination in work. Like there are
Mm-hmm.
people who really believe that these concepts were founded and created and invented by Europeans. They're colonized. They are. Hold on. I was going to bring this quote up later, but I'm going to read it anyway because this is actually explains what I was saying. Kwame Nkrumah, liberator of Ghana, a revolutionary in Ghana, was blacklisted by the United States after he wrote his book, Neocolonialism, explaining how the U.S. And other European countries were basically controlling. He was basically explaining like flag independence. Like he was explaining how these countries can be independent, but at the same time, like still be slaves.
Right.
But anyway, in one of his books, the book was called I can't ever say it. It's Consciencism. It's supposed to be his like philosophical opus, like
Oh,
a philosophical
conscientism.
foundation. Conscientism, yes. I tried to read it. I am honest to God, I did. I sat, I
It
forced my,
looks
I
like
could not
conscientism.
understand. Yes, it does. I could
Oh
not
boy.
understand a word he was trying to say. He is criticized with that book because he writes it as if people know the philosophical topics he's talking about. So he kind of just jumps right in and starts like debating these other philosophical ideas. I don't know who they are though, and I don't know what these terms mean. So I'm just like reading anyway. But his intro was great, and I got that. And he has a quote where he says, he says quote, a colonial student does not by origin belong to the intellectual history in which the university philosophers are such important or such impressive landmarks. The colonial student can be so seduced by these attempts to give a philosophical account of the universe that surrenders his whole personality to them. When he does this, he loses sight of the fundamental social fact that he is a colonial subject. In this way, he omits to draw from his education and from the concern displayed by the great philosophers for human problems anything which he might relate to the very real problem of colonial domination, which, as it happens, conditions the immediate life of every colonized African, and obviously this is the case for any other colonized group of people as well. Um, so the purpose of this quote, or what he's trying to say in it, is that a person who basically goes, he's specifically referring to people who are like colonized, but this can apply to anyone who goes to these schools. You're going to it and learning about these, you know, philosophical opinions, even if you're not being told where the philosophy comes from. Because even people like Thomas Paine, Alex de Tocqueville, who else is there that's kind of like American philosopher? John Locke. He's English, but still.
Still.
Voltaire, like, well, Voltaire was French. Voltaire was French. But all these
Mm.
Enlightenment era people, which are kind of where this, like, the American, like, foundational philosophies come from,
And I think Voltaire,
right?
even though
They're,
he was French, still had a lot of influence on like American ideas, I think, if I'm remembering right.
yeah, he was like, yeah, wasn't he? He was like part of the whole Enlightenment. He was part of the whole Enlightenment group, right? If I remember correctly.
Yes. And
Um,
um he was like a deist. He was like super for the monarchy. like um yeah. And I believe, oh yes. in one of my French courses, we had to read one of his works called Candide, which is like a very white savior-esque story about like he's like it's like good because he's like figuring out that slavery's bad, but it's also like he's still it's still very much a like white savior, like the even though slavery is inherently evil and all that stuff, like we as white people can save them, and so I have a lot of thoughts about Voltaire. I don't like him. I don't fully hate him, but he definitely, I think a lot of his ideas like had some influence, if I'm remembering right. Again, I need to go over it and look back through some things, but yeah, there's a lot of like Enlightenment people that like influence, because I think throughout history, the United States tried to like emulate a lot of other things but like in its own way, like, and again, as a linguist, I'm always going to reference language, but like in our language, how we adopted a lot of Latin and Greek things because we wanted to be cool like the Greeks and the Romans, but because I don't know, just because. But it's like, then now you're just creating in this amalgamation of a language, and just like with the government, with the education system, and with it's like if like they're just taking all of these parts from different things and taking influence from all these different things, and it's like it just, I don't know, it just ends up taking it, like especially with the United States, you take all the bad parts from like people's different ideologies and things like that. So I don't know. We'll have to go more into that in another episode because I'm not fully prepared to speak on that. But I think it's important to note that all these philosophers and Enlightenment people, as much as some of them were good, I think still sometimes it was just more one step forward, two steps back type deal. So.
Yeah, because they were. Well, before I go on to that, what does Candide mean?
Candide, I think it means like honesty, like because candid is what it's. I think it's supposed to be like. I'm forgetting now. It's also called like like candid, or the like being candid, or like the optimism, or the optimism. French is such a stupid language to translate, but yeah, basically like candid, being candid, basically.
Okay. Yeah, I mean they're just speaking from. So, was it Marx who said this? I can't. Was it Marx who said this? It might have been Marx, but I might be getting my revolutionary people mixed up. But I believe Marx mentioned how like these different philosophers are defending their positions, and so the philosopher's job, even if the philosopher doesn't know it, is to defend the current superstructure. So the reason why it seems off is because these philosophers are sitting in a position, right? Their society has placed them as the, dominant society on the planet, or, in this era. And it's the philosopher's kind of responsibility to figure out like why that is.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that we talk about in, the when in like the African People's Socialist Party and stuff like that, even in just like Black revolutionary circles, is that like the superstructure can't criticize itself because it's not built into their system. So that's why like a lot of people, when we talk about like being like socialists or communists or stuff like that, our governmental system is based upon criticism. You're supposed to internally and constantly look at, revise, fix, criticize your own governmental system, and look for the flaws to fix it. This system we live in currently is based on, like we talked about the Puritans, show up, shut up dissenters, and do what we say. There isn't any type of self criticism in that. And so, and if you allow it, right, the system ends up being changed. That's why you have like labor movements. We don't have off days because they like us. People had to die for off days. People had to die to go to the same restrooms and so on and so forth. People still have to die for like literally any kind of right anyone got here was died for. For like literally things as small as like drinking at the same water fountain was died for. Literally, like this system is literally based on shut it down, shut up, and listen. That's why again, and that's why the school is so important, because you need people to be baked and bathed in this idea that they are superior and that anything that they do is justified by virtue of their own existence. Because if you can get that through people's heads, you can do anything. Because by virtue of your own existence, you have the right to do whatever the hell you want to do. That's why, and again, Christianity helps as that foundation, because Christians typically kind of have this like Christianity kind of gives you this mentality that you have like a bird's eye view of the world. Like the world is like this chaotic, insane, wicked and evil place, and the Christian is kind of sitting up, right? Is perched like an eagle, just watching. And they're kind of like the gods of the world. They know what's wrong, they know what's right. Like they may not be God, right? But for all intents and purposes, to the unbeliever, they're basically God. Like they know what's right, they know what's wrong, definitively, for every culture, every people group. They know what is natural. They know what is unnatural. They have definitive answers and definitive rules and regulations for every single person, people group, gender role, gender position, gender existence, every single thing. They're like these omnipotent, omnipresent beings. And then you just infuse that with just a little bit of, racial superiority and nationalistic superiority, and boom, you have like literally the most insane, bloodthirsty, self-affirming echo chambery group of, and that echo chamber is the worst part. They can't be criticized because again, when they look at you are the problem. They're not the problem. Again, they're the eagle. So you're like this like ant that's coming up and like yelling at the eagle, and the eagle is like, I see all things. I am the Oracle of Delphi. I can see. And like you're just it's like trying to talk to the Oracle, and they're like, I am the Oracle. You think that you are gay. No, you are not. I know you are not gay. But if you would just trust my foresight and my what do they call it? My what do they call those programs they're trying to bring back? Is it called deconversion therapy?
Yeah, conversion therapy.
Yeah, if you just accept my conversion therapy, right? We will make you see as we see. Like it's like bossing say underneath the freaking water, like with the Dali insane. Like, but that's what it's intended to do. And so that's why you see, like, it's not that they care about Christianity per se right now. They're using Christianity to try to get a reign back. They're trying to galvanize the public again with it's kind of like putting a shot of like white supremacy in people because it's already there, but it's kind of like you're trying to like reinvigorate it. You're giving people kind of like high concentration doses, and you're kind of appealing back to origins in order to get it, into your system again, and also to scare other people again, because again, this is an echo chamber, so you're not really going to argue with these people, even if like you're in Congress, or even if you're in local politics, or if you're just out and about in Walmart. Like you're not really going to convince these people, because they're, again, that ego perched up. They think that even like every argument you have, they view you as just like as a misguided lost person who doesn't have the answer for anything. Even
Yep.
if they don't know anything and have done no research on anything, in their mind, there's no amount of research that you can do that really is really going to amount to anything, because
Mm-hmm.
everything that you research is done objectively and not within the purview of the religious system. So
Yep.
you could be Richard Daw- you could be a PhD level astrophysicist. And in the Christian's mind, technically, they'll tell stories about this. How like the little old lady who just is faithful and goes to church and doesn't know shit about the world is in a better place than the astrophysicist, and actually knows more than the astrophysicist, because you know why? Because the little old lady who goes to church every Sunday, who's 80 years old and doesn't know shit about the world, has Jesus. And at the end of the day, the astrophysicist is gonna die, and he's gonna wake up and realize that he just got his astrophysicist ass sent straight to hell. And the little old lady who got made fun of by the astrophysicist for not knowing anything is gonna spend eternity in heaven with her brand new kneecaps, dancing and singing the same song for eternity over and over again. That's how they think. It.
Oh my no, it's so true. It's so true. Like I saw someone talking the other day. It was like some video on Instagram or something, and they were saying that heaven and hell are so easy. Like there's such an easy way to control people. Like having those ideas,
Yes.
having here's a good place you're gonna go forever, and everything's gonna be great, your body's gonna be made anew, and so like all of your troubles that you have, like, and I think that's something, if I'm remembering right, I'm like getting I always get memories of my childhood when we have these, but if I'm remembering right, I think I like when I was 14, well, when I was 14 I started developing back issues. It's just something on my dad's side of the family that we have, a lot of joint problems, but I was like, man, my back really like has been really hurting lately. I don't know what's wrong or whatever. And I seem to remember at some point my mom told me, well, in heaven, your body will be made anew, and so you won't have to worry about that. And I'm like, yeah, but right now my back hurts. I can't play my sports anymore. I can't, because I'm in pain all the time. And just having that, I like this idea that suffering now is completely fine because later when you die everything's going to be great is such an easy way to control
And it's
people, and to get people to be complacent with a deeply flawed system of government and yeah,
that's what I
of
was gonna say. I'm
society.
glad you said that. Yeah.
Yeah, it like
Yeah.
it's like, because if you're thinking, well, this system of government sucks and they're killing people in the street, and they're um like people are getting high ranking rich people are getting away with the most heinous shit known to man. But that's all fine because eventually we'll have a heaven, and then they're gonna go to hell and they'll be punished. So it's all gonna work out in the end,
It's
guys. You
like
don't
the
need to
hope
do anything
of
now. Like, are you
it's
joking?
the hope of a judgment.
It's
Yeah.
just,
It's like the idea
yeah.
that someone else is gonna take care of your problem.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that's what like Marx said. Like a lot of people don't understand what Marx meant when he said like religion is the opium of the masses. That the whole quote, he wasn't necessarily saying that. Like a lot of Christians love to use that quote to discredit all of Marx without reading anything else he says.
So funny.
Again,
They do
proof
that.
of what I just said. Yeah, like they're not going to read anything else that Marx says, and make a determination. They're just gonna read that little quote and be like, "Oh, he doesn't like God, so we're not gonna even read anything he has to say because it's just poison. Like they act like it's
Right.
poison." Anyway,
Anything that's
um,
that's written by someone who doesn't like God, or written or contains things that are like anti-religion or whatever, is immediately discounted as not having any merit. But it's
hmm
like, no, you just read. Read more. Like, don't
and,
discount things just
and
because
I
it's like that
think,
stupid, the don't judge a book by its cover, but it's true. Like, don't
hmm
read one sentence of something and immediately say, "Oh, this is totally anti my beliefs. I can't even look at it because it's blasphemous." God.
hmm
So
and my
stupid.
thing too is like it is, and again, if this is the truth, the unequivocal, undebated, literally like damn near handed down on a silver platter by the omnipotent, omniscient, omnipotent God of the universe, you should not be scared of what Marx has to say.
Right?
Because literally, the Bible should wipe the fucking floor with Marx if that's the case.
Apparently.
Like, apparently. But like I was saying, no, like when he says it's the opium of the masses, he's basically just saying that the masses or people will use religion as a comfort,
Mm-hmm.
and it is like it's a
Mm-hmm.
comfort in the suffering because it gives you something to believe in.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when things are going to shit and everything's going bad and the world is falling apart and you're starving and people are dying, whether it's mass disease, whether it's your government, whether it's anything, you'll use it. And the problem is you'll be so focused on like the spiritual aspect of things, and because your people are usually so scared to do anything materialistically because that's an immediate effect. A lot of people will offset it, like oh, I'll put it on you, God. I just trust you, God, to do it. That's okay, but then you're just gonna sit and be poor for the rest of your life. Because I mean, at the end of the day, Lazarus was poor to the day he died.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if we really want to be honest, like he was poor to the day he died. And I mean, now granted, in the eternal life world, quote unquote, he was fine, but like you're going to stay there. But here's the thing too, you don't have to stay down there. But see, they is again, this is why it's so useful for power structures because for the problem is it is a virtue for you to stay there. That's the thing. It's like a religious trick because now instead of you, like you're made to feel like you feel like you're entitled to health care, you're entitled to housing. Like again, when you believe in these foundational, even if you're not a Christian, our government operates off of the assumption that all people are just inherently bad. That people are just like you'll see that like I've gone to like local political town meetings where we'll like talk to representatives and these customer service representatives of the Fortune 500, and you'll sit there and talk to them and they'll sit there and act like, oh well, if we can't just give a house to everyone, like they're just these lazy people, they're just not going to do da da da. Again, this is based off of Christian ideology. They may not
Mm-hmm.
even be Christian, but they
Mm-hmm.
have been trained in the philosophy. The
Yep.
philosophy. This again segues into the second point where I was saying that, like the student is designed to protect the system when they are graduated.
Mm-hmm.
It is built to create a certain type of class defender.
Mm-hmm.
So when people go through the system, and after you've purged the dissenters, even you have different classes or categories. You have colonized people who are meant to be like the defenders of the system within like the like black the like the Candace Owenses of the world. That's them. They're meant to
Mm-hmm.
defend the system to the colonized people and to make the white supremacy look like acceptable. And then you've got the white folks like the Matt Walshes of the world, and their job is to defend the system vigorously and to either defend the principles, Christian or not Christian, because again, the foundations are based off of this loosely deist Christian philosophical Thomas Aquinas style philosophical ideals. And so you never get to hear the working class's opinion. And that's why a lot of like black liberation stuff is excluded from schools. Because there are like you do have like the white ones like Marx, Engels, Lenin, Stalin. You don't hear from them either. But in the United States specifically, the only real people who the majority of like the socialist working class writings have been done by black folks. And so you have like we're kind of like the philosophers of like the working class in the United States. Even though we're like we speak specifically about ourselves and our situation, it still applies to like almost everybody here because like everybody here is an oppressed nation.
Yep.
Um and then you have the white folks and they usually that's why if you ever like look at like socialist organizations, you see a lot of black people are usually in like black orgs and then like white people are like really in like these like Marxist Leninist organizations because Marx and Lenin are like speaking to like the white experience in capitalism, and then like black liberal like we're using the same thing, but like we're talking about different situations. So there's like kind of like a split, but we all kind of agree. Um, but you don't ever hear about them. Like I went to my library, for instance. I did a test. I just requested that they order because I went to the Lenin Stalin section. I couldn't find anything on black folks at all. I
Hmm.
couldn't find Frantz Fanon. I couldn't find Harry Haywood. I couldn't find any like black writer or Malia Shatella. No one.
Hmm.
I couldn't find anything with Stalin either. If it was anything about Stalin or Lenin, it was always written about. Again, look at the authors, people. They're always written about by a Western person who is going to give you the opinion of the society. Again, they're going to have the opinion of the defenders of the philosophies of this system. So you think you're reading a book about Stalin. You're reading an opinion piece about a a revolution that happened that is antithetical to the system.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, they have nothing good to say about it, because
Mm-hmm.
that would mean it would overturn what we live in. So I just ordered the books written by Lenin and Stalin. That's it. That's it. I didn't ask them to endorse nothing. I just asked them to order and just put on the shelf their books so you can read it and they can speak for themselves. And most of these are pamphlets. Like they're like actually hold on. I'm a actually do I have it with me? No. It's so thin. They're about as thin as this book right here. Like this little book right here. That's about how thin they are. They're like an hour and a half read. Every single request, I requested at least 15 different books. Everyone was denied.
Wow.
Not a single book was allowed. There was not nothing written by Stalin, nothing written by Lenin, nothing written by even black writers, nothing written by Amali, nothing written by
Wow.
anybody who was black or even leftist and anything. None. However, you are allowed to have the books that are written by the defenders of the system, and they'll talk to you about this opposing idea. They don't want you to hear the idea because you're working class. You're a working class or you're an oppressed colonial subject. And so your philosophers are out there, but they're not going to show you your philosophers. You have to find them. And then that's why like Malcolm and all these people and like Lenin and all these different people are dangerous because they're the opposing philosophers. So they're competing. That's why Malcolm was such a problem. Because Malcolm is sitting here talking to black people specifically, and he's exposing the system And he's challenging their philosophers. They're having like a philosophical battle. So he's over here saying like, oh yeah, like he's like, they're sitting over here telling you that that you need to just sit down and be peaceful and all this stuff. And he said, why should you be peaceful when they're coming up to your house and dragging you out of it and hanging you by a tree? And everyone's like clapping hands like, yeah, that's a good point. I've seen interviews with Malcolm where like the white interviewer is like, so don't you think I kid you not, the interviewer said and was like, don't you think he's like, don't you think you're propagating hate against the white man? And I'm sitting here and I'm like, he actually asked that question. And Malcolm's just sitting there looking at him like, excuse me. You act like we have not been being strung up on trees for the past like 60 plus, 100 plus years. But you want to get mad. But again, they don't want, again, the students of these schools. That's why we have to pay for colleges now.
Mm-hmm.
Because Reagan's
Good
I
old
can't
Reagan.
remember what he was. It was his secretary of something. I can't remember. But they advised that they start making it to where schools have a tuition fee, because they originally were like free or almost free. But after the Vietnam War, right, you have a lot of these socialist, communist ideals like growing, and it becomes dangerous for the US because those are working class. That's the competing philosophy. And so that will topple the fucking government. So you can't let these people, you can't just let average poor people who are going to gravitate towards their own philosophies in college as they learn. You can't let these poor people go to school, learn the philosophies of the working class and the colonized, read people would read Frantz Fanon and become radical.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Huey P. Newton, he read Frantz Fanon 6 times. And then he made The Wretched of the Earth. He read it 6 times, and then he made it required reading for everyone in the Black Panther Party. Like, these people read these people and became, like, revolutionized and were ready to burn shit down. They can't let that happen. So now there's a paywall. So now if you're poor, you don't go to school. The only
Mm-hmm.
people who get to go to school are specifically the people who will support the superstructure that we're in. The person who is that idiotic business suit tailored guy going to the business school at your college who's like,
Oh.
yeah, I do day trading on my daytime, bro. Like, that idiot, that's who they want. Who's gonna talk about, yeah, man, I made a butt ton of money because you just gotta make the system work for you.
You
And like,
you just
that's what
gotta
you
buy
want.
some Bitcoin.
Awesome, Becca. Yeah, exactly. Like, that's what they want. And then they want the pastors who are going to be like, America's this Christian nation. And as the Oracle of Delphi, I can see that all we have to do is just go back to the way things were. And then you just like, and then you need the wives to go into the house, to not be independent. Don't let the women become radical now. That's
Mm-mm.
a problem. They need to sit inside. Don't think. Again, you just need to be educated enough to be a good little worker. You just need to know how to
Mm-hmm.
sew, knit, walk barefoot. I don't know where the barefoot thing comes from either. I really am so lost. Like,
Oh
I've seen
yeah.
so many side
Uh.
tangent. I've seen so many TikToks and like Instagram reels, and they're like, I'm a submissive wife," and like a guy was like, "My wife is better than yours. She's barefoot, submissive, and makes me food." And I'm like, "Oh God, I can't."
What's
It's
going
just
on? I feel like I'm going
I
crazy. All this, yeah.
I don't get the barefoot thing. It's so weird. It's such a odd thing to fixate on, but I digress. So yes, like that is who they want going to school, and that's what they make sure of. So you have the wealthy that go to the good schools, and even these good schools teach white supremacist, colonizing, imperialist education to everyone so that the colonized person, like the Candace Owens, will learn this. Instead of going back and helping her people, she goes and she's basically a self-curated Uncle Tom. She's Fiddler from Roots. She's sitting over there going, look, you just don't know how to talk to the white man. Now, that's why you don't have nothing. You just got to go out there and make sure you got to just do what he needs you to do, and you have all the food that you need. That's who she is, right? That's who she is. And then, like I said, the other people, the white folks, their job is to come out of the system, and their job is to be the JD Vances of the world, the people who are going to be like, yes, America is this, the whites this and Western supremacy, and like I like Marco Rubio's whole damn speech that he did at the Munich Security Council or whatever, where he was basically telling the rest of Europe that they want to recolonize the world. Or like America was, this golden age of colonialism. He used the word colonialism. He's like this golden age, and he's like then he was like the rising of these communist people threatened to bring the whole world under the iron curtain of the sickle and hammer. And I'm like, y'all act like the world was not whooping y'all's ass for coming into their lands and treating them terribly. Vietnam beat the France, the United States, and Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And said, who else wants to come up in here and try to take our stuff and to enslave our people? And we left there and we try to give people medals for being down there. The average lifespan at one point was 30 seconds to 15 minutes. Those people had nothing. They were using recycled bullets and broken muskets. Malcolm, hold on, let me pull that tangent back. Because I was about to go another one. I'm so sorry.
Put the Vietnam War.
I'm gonna get to my other point. I know, right? That's another one. I need to remember these are other episodes.
Right. Oh, dude, right.
Because it's so hard, because everything is so connected.
Right.
And, it's so hard sometimes to differentiate because it all comes into play. But let me finish my point, because I know you have the linguistic points, I want to hear that too, because I know I don't have a lot of knowledge on that. But yeah. So anyway, lots of to close the points out, or this point out. So the people who typically reject the system, and by the system again, I mean the political system. You may see it if you go to high school or something. People who feel what's the point of working, because it doesn't do anything anyway. Or black people especially will kind of be F the system, da 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 da, that kind of attitude. So those people who have that kind of attitude towards the system and this governmental system, they usually don't really do well in education, because the point of education isn't just to teach you these basic facts like math and stuff, is to get you, the student, to buy in to the program. You have to buy into the program. They need you to be the future MAGA hat wearing person. That's the point. And it's not as a joke, because I know we think of MAGA as a joke, but they want that hyper patriotic, who loves their country, thinks everything America did was for the better, thought that thinks that Western civilization is the greatest thing on the planet. They want that. So if you're going through school and you're talking about Malcolm X and Frantz Fanon and Lenin and Stalin, they're going to look at you like you're crazy. If you're going to start talking about socialism and you should have radical democracy and even community control of the police, right? Mm-hmm. The idea that the people should have direct and firm control over the police department, you will sit there and really seriously argue. Like, we're having a whole campaign on that in my city, and we have to like argue and like fight because that idea is antithetical to the superstructure. They need control of the police so they can keep you under control. If the police are told to stand down by the public, then what the fuck does the state have? That's why they fight it. They don't want you choosing who the hell gets hired, because what happens is you hire people from your communities who are loyal to who? That's the fucking problem. Who are they loyal to? The people in the education system. Who are you loyal to? If you are loyal to the people, the government will fall. They need you to be loyal to the system, because the people who run the system are the people who have the most money, who are exploiting it from the white workers and the colored workers and everyone who, and I say colored, I mean everybody who has a skin tone that is not light.
Not me.
I know it's such a long-winded way to say that. But they're exploiting all the workers of every ethnicity, and then they're also exploiting all the people where they get the raw materials from in all those countries where they have oil and gold and cobalt and all those places. In order for them to do what they need to do and make the money they need to do and pay for the yacht gas that they need, then they need you to be loyal to the system that supports them. If you are loyal to the people, and then the people are not being supported by the system, naturally, you're going to start asking questions about how can we change the system. Like in Cuba. That's what they did with the medical system. Like, over here, they will let you die if you can't pay. Over there, they don't charge you at all, because they just view it as a human right. Like, you have the right to be healthy, and you have the right to have access to this stuff. So they'll send doctors across the world and allow them to fix people up for free. That's why the U.S. is telling all of them that their countries that if they send unless they send their Cuban doctors back to Cuba, they're gonna slap them with a 50% tariff. Whenever COVID happened, as much as horrible as the U.S. government has been to Cuba, when COVID happened, Cuba offered to send doctors free of charge to the United States to help with the crisis, because they knew we were having a shortage and we were all dying over here. The U.S. government said no. They had a free army of doctors who were going to come in and just help for the sake of it. And they told them no, because, again, if they let those doctors in, the people are going to see that another form of government is out there that is loyal to the people. And then it's going to make people start asking questions. Like, have you ever seen The Hobbit? When the master of Lake Town is sitting there stressing the fuck out about Bard, and he's like, people will start asking questions and launching inquiries, and that's the problem. They can't have that. They would rather you sit there and die before they have to sit there and deal with an armed. The worst thing, for them is what happened in Russia. Whenever those people, those poor peasants who they thought weren't worth shit, got off their asses, put a gun on their shoulder, and banged on the door of the ruling class and said, your farm is getting seized. Get the fuck out. That right there is the worst possible scenario. And when it happened, they realized, shit, our philosophers were wrong. We aren't here by virtue of our own existence. We're not gods, right? We can die? That's a problem. That's a problem. So they need to make sure that never, ever happens again. And in the US, where everyone has a gun, if the people got educated, it would be DEFCON 1 in here. Bezos, Zuckerberg, everybody is done. We would arrest the Epstein list. We don't wait for them to arrest themselves. Could you imagine banging on the door with a rope and being like, come on out, Clinton, time to serve your sentence. And he's sitting there looking at the damn rope. Worst case scenario. So anyway, I'll end. So again, by design, the education system is Eurocentric as a thematic justification of European dominance and praise of those who welcome their influence, rule, and economic systems. That's very important. They make sure to lay a lot of praise on societies and civilizations that basically, quote unquote, accepted their rule. That way, it makes them seem very benevolent. And it also makes their system seem like it's the best. And they like to demonize other societies' cultures to make it seem as if that their cultures, even though they were wiped out, it was like good for the world anyway, because their cultures just weren't as good as the European culture, because they promoted, like two-spirited people like the Native Americans, or women were allowed to walk around with their shirts off in Africa and some African tribes and countries because again, they weren't worried about getting raped because that wasn't built into the fucking system. They were human beings. It was like, why the hell do you gotta sit there and wear a damn shirt and you gotta walk around? You're a human fucking being. It's like it's funny because like in the Genesis story, right? God is like, who told you you were naked? You did! Because the Christians will show up and be like, hey, you would think that the European would show up and be like, wow, interesting that there's a culture out here that doesn't feel the shame that we think universally applies to everyone. Huh! It
Interesting.
works. Interesting. But anyway, I'm done. I'm sorry. I ranted. I literally looked at the clock and it said like 5:06. And I was like, oh, okay, I have 2 more bullet points. Let me just do this real quick. And it was 5:37. So I'll let you do the linguistics portion because I didn't realize how long I went.
No worries. Also, throughout the video of folks watching on YouTube, if you see me like looking around and like you've probably saw a little cat tail. One of my cats is in the office with me, and so she's been kind of being a cat, so I've been trying to keeping an eye on her. So my my linguistics rant, it's not going to be too long this time. I'm on a little bit of a time constraint today anyway. So, but I did want to mention something that I found really interesting that I learned in one of my linguistics classes. This was a few years ago. I don't remember when I even learned about this, but to preface, I want to. Okay, bye. I want to wanted to reach out to my fellow white folks. I wanted to just pose a question to everyone. So I don't know if we've noticed that TikTok and social media has been a way, a vessel, I guess, through which we have adapted a lot of AAVE into the popular culture, into the popular vernacular, I guess. But it's like, but my question is, why do you think that when someone tries to quote unquote act black or try to speak black or whatever, without any knowledge of African American culture, why that sounds so stupid, basically, why it sounds so wrong? And it's not because AAVE is a bunch of slang, and for to preface, AAVE stands for African American Vernacular English, and it's not a collection of slang like people seem to think, and like it gets adapted into our popular culture. It's its own dialect of English. It's its own standalone rule governed dialect. And so my little rant today is about is not about, but I wanted to touch on, because we were talking about education today, I wanted to touch on the not the Brown versus Board of Education. Oh my gosh, what was this one called? Basically in Oakland in 1996, Oakland, California, the Oakland School Board passed a resolution defining Ebonics, which is now kind of a retired term. Especially, that's not a term I should or can use in order to define AAVE, from what I understand. But that's the term that was used in the resolution. But basically, it defined that as the native language of 28,000 African American students in that school district. And why is this an important thing I wanted to touch on? Well, so this was the first time, if I'm looking at this timeline right, I've got a little timeline up in front of me, that AAVE was acknowledged as a separate dialect of English. However, it was not acknowledged as the native language as of these African American students in order to recognize its it was good that it recognized that this was a separate dialect of English, but it didn't do this in order to preserve it, in order to, I guess,
like to utilize it.
Yeah, it's not it wasn't, I guess, a way for it to be utilized or to be taught. It was just being recognized as a native language so that quote unquote standard American English could be taught better. And I think part of it though was really good in that, I think most of their goal, was to make sure that teachers who, spoke both, standard American English and African American vernacular English would be paid because of that bilingualism. There was still that sort of underlying, current of I guess eradication, because we've seen this. And again, my minor's in French, so I've learned a lot of French history, and we've seen this in France, where the separate dialects of French and separate languages within the French country, like the state of France, they've been basically eradicated in order to preserve this like Parisian French. Even like any regional accent is super looked down upon. And slowly but surely they're kind of coming back, but this is something we see a lot in English as well. In my linguistics classes, we kind of make fun of it's called the l'Académie Française, like this organization that regulates the French language and is like super, strict and whatever. But I think that same sort of line of thinking is very, very present in the United States, and especially in our school system. Like double negatives, which are completely fine in a lot of languages, and especially in African American vernacular English, are like super vilified. You probably know Chukwu, but like, growing up, it was super drilled into us that double negatives mean a positive, so you can't use double negatives. But in AAVE, that's totally fine. Double negatives are very prevalent and can often be used for emphasis, things like that. And so having this standard American English is just another way for the state to control, for the state to dictate beliefs lines of thinking, etc., on what or who it is right to be. And I think I really wanted to touch on that because, especially with AAVE, like we see different phrases or words be brought into the popular lingo, just as lingo, without acknowledging or understanding the rule governed dialect that it comes from, or the history behind it, or the the community from which it comes from, and also acknowledging that AVE is also itself not exactly one standard term, because there's different places in which African Americans have lived, obviously in the United States. Like, that's not some revolutionary thought, but for example, like Detroit AAVE is going to be a lot different from like Atlanta AAVE, and so there's also those regional differences as well. So not like having these like terms like period, or I feel so white saying that, but like period, or like oh, now I'm forgetting everything that's like, but there's so much, like, I mean, half of the popular vernacular, like, oh, like clock that, sis, like, oh my god, like things like that. I know some of it comes from the gay community, which has also stolen it from AAVE. So it's like all this lingo, and circling back to my kind of first little point I tried to make, the stuff that people misappropriate or try to like take on without using, like, without understanding the fact that this language is like incredibly, I say this language, like this dialect of English is incredibly rule governed. It sounds bad. It sounds off, especially to African Americans. Like, oh my god, like I've seen so many videos of black folks being like just like reacting to people using that slang, like the podcast Sad Boys, like they had this episode recently where they were watching a video of this girl using like Gen Z slang and whatever, and it was just really funny to watch, because it's like, yeah, the lot of this slang is just straight up AAVE, just like whiteified, like I think one of them said like it's mayonnaisefied or something like that. Like but it's so true. It's like there's like, if you don't know how to properly use the copula deletion, which is like where you can delete certain parts of, I'm forgetting the exact definition, but basically in AV you can like delete the be verb in sentences like at times, and there's different aspects and moods to verbs that you don't see in standard American English, and so if you're not using those correctly, it's so easy to tell that you have no idea how AAVE works. But anyway, like I said, my main point, I think, with this little rant I wanted to go on was that it was a good step, I think, and it's something that's huge, especially in the linguistics community, to learn about. Like, hey, this was a huge step, recognizing AAVE as a rule governed dialect. It's like it's became accepted as a native language for a bunch of African American students in this area. However, there's still a long ways to go in order to fully recognize it as its own dialect, like just across the United States, to not think of it as just slang, or just something to be like slang like skateboarding slang, or something like different cultures, obviously, like subcultures of people have their own slang, but AAVE is not slang. It's a dialect. It is like, and I use the word rule governed. I mean that it has very clear and defined usages of verbs, of nouns, etc., that are all that all have their own rules, that all have very different applications from standard American English, and so that's really what that's really what I mean with that. But having this finally be recognized also gives it an opportunity, I think, also to be vilified. And like I said, this goes for I just lost my train of thought. Sorry, but anyway, my final point, guys. I've been out of my Adderall for 2 weeks now. I'm kind of going crazy. But my main point is having this concept of standard American English, which doesn't even exist to begin with. I think is just such an easy way, especially in the classroom, for people to control. Not recognizing different dialects, not recognizing different usages of language, having this, what we in the linguistic community call a prescriptivist point of view. You can only do this one way, and this is the right way, and there's no other way that this can be used. I think it's so damaging to culture, and it's so damaging, especially in the United States, where we are a melting pot of different cultures. I think having this concept of a standard American English dialect is completely stupid, and I think it's really, really important to recognize dialects like AVE or Creoles like Cajun French, which are really prominent in Louisiana, in Haiti, I believe, and having even like there's like this weird dialect of German that exists in Texas, which is like I've heard and is crazy. Like there's so many different dialects and languages that exist in the United States, and I think having this one language is having one standard American English is just another way that the government controls and again, it's that Eurocentrism of this is the only right language, this is the only right race to be, I guess. Like this is the only right thing to follow. Yeah, I don't know. Sorry, my thoughts are I'm like really scattered today, but but yeah. Yeah, if
I mean,
anyone wants to read up more on the timeline of AAVE and it's called on this website, it's called the Ebonics timeline. It's a PBS website. So please don't take that as the right, I guess, term for it. That is for Black folks to claim for themselves. For right now, that's not what I'm going to use to describe African American vernacular English, but I can have this link somewhere because it's really, really interesting reading up on this timeline of AVE and yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's so, and then also, I don't know. I have a lot of points I can make about this. I may have to wait for another episode.
Oh no, you're good. I mean,
yeah.
We can link it in the show notes too. So I'll be sure to put the link that Becca was talking about in there for anyone so you can take a look at it. Honestly, I think that was a really good point. I think the only thing I wanted to just add, like you said, like, I like to say that we're like, the U.S. is a prison of nations. That's what Lenin used to call Russia before because it's so funny, during the Soviet Union, Russia was an amalgamation of different cultures and different speaking and Slavic groups. And the Soviet Union came into being, they allowed those other countries to, when they joined in the Soviet Union, they were allowed to like recognize their own dialects. They were able to basically have like a self-deterministic nature. And so I think, like, Becca was saying with the whole um, how it's like another way for the the government, the state, the superstructure itself to exert their their class control in a sense, and also again, like the idea of this American Standard English doesn't even really exist in reality. I mean, the only people they're really referring to is the bourgeoisie and what they
Mm-hmm.
speak, and even they don't all speak proper quote unquote American English.
Exactly.
And the only reason why we have, yeah, the only reason why we have a vernacular is because we weren't even allowed to speak our own language. Like
Mm-hmm.
this is why, and like
Yeah.
to even tie it more so back to like the education as well. Like people, you need to know your like working class oppressed national histories.
Mm-hmm.
Like the reason why African Americans, black people, whatever, speak the way they do and have that African American vernacular is because no one was teaching us English.
That's what I was going to bring up as
Like,
well. There
yeah,
was,
like we were told not to speak our own languages and we
mm-hmm.
had to figure it the fuck out.
Yeah. A
So it's
lot
like
of
a
the
hybrid.
Oh,
Go
sorry.
ahead,
I
go
was
ahead, go
just
ahead.
gonna say a lot of the elements that I mentioned from African American vernacular English, English, like the copula deletion, different moods and aspects of verbs, and I'm forgetting the exact names for
Mhm.
some of them, um, like, oh my goodness gracious, oh, I had like a chart up here, but like different perfect tense, like anyway, but like having different aspects of stuff which mean like talk about time as like something continuously happened or is continuously happening, etc. Are come from African languages, and so AAVE rose up because enslaved Africans had to figure out how to pretty much like that. This is that was okay. These tenses and aspects and things like that were existed in their native languages, but if you're not allowed to speak your native languages, you have to figure out, okay, how am I supposed to like construct this in this language that I'm being forced to speak. And so that's how AVE came around, is like, okay, we have to they basically, it was like, this is, these constructions are natural to us, and so they had
We
to
have to bend
basically
it
come up
to fit
with, okay,
those.
this is how we're going to say this continuously happens every, every this amount of times, or this was happening and then now it has stopped happening. And I'm sure
Mhm.
some people hearing that will know what constructions I'm talking about. I'm not going to give examples because I will sound way too white, but and I feel like that's that can be for another voice, not me, to give examples for. But yeah, it like you were saying, it's this is not just like a dialect that rose up. It's really important to know, yes, this dialect came from necessity, from the threat of not having any other language, of not being able to speak their native languages as enslaved people. So
Mhm.
this is not just a
Yeah,
random like, this is a something that rose up from, yeah, from enslavement. So
yeah, and we basically became another tribe. They took these people from they because they didn't care where the hell you came from. Like you were just a black person to them.
mm-hmm.
So like you have the people who were shipped to Jamaica, shipped to Haiti, shipped to the United States, and all of us can trace everything we do back to the continent. But we all have like a unique flair to each other because we all had to come together and basically become new tribes. So like we're all still the same family group. We're just all a bunch of different tribes. We're the like Africans in America tribe, then there's the Africans in Jamaica tribe, and so on and so forth. But anyway, I'll say that for a Pan African, episode. But yeah, learn your history. The school is not there to teach you anything of value that's going to help you in your situations. So be sure that you do outside research, find books, read working class philosophers and stuff like that. So that way, um, you're educated and you're not just being taught with the imperialist, you know, Elon Musk's and Rockefellers want you to think, because again, they're going to protect their interests. They're not going to lose their oil reserves. They're not going to give up their yachts. They're not going to give up their, Epstein Islands. They're not going to. Like, so if you want your interests taken care of, you want to help people and stuff like that, you're going to have to start looking out for your own interests, learning what your philosophers have taught, educate yourself, learn your own history, whether you be African, American, Chicano, Native American, whatever you are. Even if you're white, learn your colonialist history. Because even though y'all's history is jack shit in recent years, like, it's important to know it so you can fix it.
Exactly.
Like,
You can take accountability.
everyone needs, yes, everyone needs to know their stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because everyone has a part to play. Because y'all are getting exploited too. They just like to make y'all look at us and to, like, black and brown people, and they like to kind of pit us up against each other, and so that way y'all don't realize that they're picking your pocket at the same time.
Exactly.
So everyone learn their history, but I mean, I think we covered everything.
Pretty much. And yeah, I think anything we didn't touch on that we wanted to, I feel like we can. Again, we're episodes.
There will be so many episodes
every 2 weeks.
So many. Every 2 weeks.
Yeah, we've got a lot of topics, guys. And
join an organization.
Like Chukwu said.
Join an org.
Yes, like Chukwu said though, like oh shoot, what was I gonna say? Well, like, oh yeah, everything's interconnected. So a lot of this we'll be bringing up in other episodes. Like if we didn't finish touching on one thing, it's gonna come up later. Like, yeah, it's all connected. But I think we'll cover most everything for now.
We did. For now. All right, everybody. We will see you all in the next 2 weeks. We hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye.